How many Americans do you think are forced to retire years before they planned? Most people guess it's a small number, a fringe case, the kind of thing that happens to other people. It's not a small number, not even close. And once you see it, it will all make sense, because this is actually one of the most consistent findings in retirement research going back decades. So let's talk about it. When we talk about retirement risk, most of the conversation centers on one thing: running out of money. You've probably heard it framed as outliving your assets, or as the central fear driving every savings decision you've ever made. That's the risk everyone is trying to solve. But there is another risk sitting right next to it. A quieter one. One that doesn't get talked about in the same breath. And according to the data, it's hitting far more people, and doing so completely without warning. That risk is retiring too early. Not by choice, by force. Here's the number that should stop you cold. According to the Employee Benefit Research Institute, EBRI, one of the most respected retirement research organizations in the country, roughly 40 to 50% of retirees in any given year since the late 1990s have reported retiring earlier than they planned. In the most recent data from EBRI's 2025 Retirement Confidence Survey, that figure sits at 40%. The Trans-America Center for Retirement Studies puts its number even higher. Their 2023 research found that 56% of retirees left the workforce sooner than they intended. 56%. That's not a fringe case. That's the majority. And yet most people have never once built a plan around this possibility. Most people have a target retirement age, 65, maybe 67, and they're building every financial decision around hitting that number. The contributions, the social security strategy, the investment timeline, all of it assumes they get to choose when they stop working. Most of them won't. Here's where things get interesting. When researchers ask retirees why they left early, the answers are not what you'd expect. Only around 9 to 17% left because they had enough money saved and could afford to. That's the version we all imagine when we think about retiring early, the comfortable version. Everyone else left because life happened first. According to the Trans-America Center for Retirement Studies, among retirees who retired sooner than planned, 45% cited health reasons, physical limitations, illness, disability. Another 42% cited employment-related reasons, job loss, organizational changes at their company, a buyout offer that didn't really feel optional. And 20% pointed to family obligations, which in many cases means stepping out of the workforce to care for an aging parent or a spouse dealing with a serious health issue. That last one deserves a moment. According to the AARP Public Policy Institute, family caregivers age 50 and older who leave the workforce to care for a parent lose, on average, nearly $304,000 in wages and benefits over their lifetime. That number includes foregone earnings, lost employer contributions to retirement plans, and reduced social security credits, all compounding against them simultaneously. That's not a rounding error. That is a retirement-altering number. So we have health, we have layoffs, we have caregiving. 3 separate forces, any one of which can end a career years ahead of schedule. But here's the thing. Early retirement doesn't just mean fewer working years. It creates a cascading financial hit that compounds quietly for the rest of your life. Let's start with Social Security, because this is where the numbers get truly difficult to absorb. The Social Security Administration's own data shows that if your full retirement age is 67 and you claim at 62, the earliest possible age, your monthly benefit is permanently reduced by 30%. Not temporarily, for life. That means every check you receive, from 62 until the day you die, comes in 30% lighter than it would have if you had waited. According to Gallup, the average American worker in 2022 expected to retire at age 66. The actual average retirement age that year was 61. That's a 5-year gap. That 5-year difference, applied to Social Security alone, translates into a permanent monthly reduction that can easily represent tens of thousands of dollars over a 20-year retirement. Gallup's own analysis noted that this gap can translate into hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost earnings and savings combined. And then there is the compounding that never happens. The years between 60 and 65 are not just 5 more years of saving. They are 5 years when your existing portfolio, which by that point is often the largest it has ever been, continues to grow without withdrawals. The moment you retire early, 2 things happen simultaneously. You stop putting money in, and you start taking money out. That double hit, as financial planners describe it, removes your portfolio from its most powerful compounding window at precisely the wrong time. Someone who retires at 60 instead of 65 doesn't just miss 5 paychecks. They miss 5 years of employer matches, 5 years of portfolio growth, and then begin drawing down a smaller balance over a longer retirement horizon. Once you understand that, the 5-year gap stops sounding like a small inconvenience and starts sounding like what it actually is, a structural retirement shortfall. And here's the secondary data point that reframes everything. EBRI's research has found that the vast majority of people who retired earlier than planned, roughly 69% according to some data points, cited a reason completely outside of their control. Health, layoffs, caregiving. Not one of those was on their retirement planning checklist. Not one of those had a line item in their savings model. That is the real problem. It's not that people aren't saving enough. Many are genuinely trying. It's that the plan they are saving for assumes a degree of control over their own exit from the workforce that the data says most of them will simply not have. The retirement date is treated like a certainty. The research says it almost never is. So what does this mean for your household specifically? A few things. First, the social security piece. If there is any chance you could be pushed out of the workforce at 62 instead of 67, the difference between those 2 claiming ages is not theoretical. It is 30% of your monthly benefit permanently. That is a number worth putting into a spreadsheet with your own earnings history right now. The Social Security Administration's website at ssa.gov lets you see your projected benefit at each claiming age, 62, 67, and 70, using your actual earnings record. Second, the savings buffer. Researchers at the Financial Planning Association have found that accounting for retirement age uncertainty, the realistic probability that you leave earlier than planned, can require up to 28% more in savings than traditional models suggest. That is not a reason to panic. It is a reason to treat your retirement age as a range, not a fixed date, and to build at least some cushion around the earlier end of that range. Third, and maybe most importantly, having a backup plan. The Transamerica Center for Retirement Studies found that the vast majority of workers, over 80%, do not have a backup plan in the event they cannot work as long as they intended. That gap is where the real financial damage happens. This is not a story about failure. It isn't about anyone doing something wrong or falling short. It's a story about a risk that is sitting plainly in the data, one that has been consistent for 3 decades of research, that almost never makes it into the actual conversation people have with themselves about retirement. The fear of running out of money is real. The fear of being forced out of the workforce 5 years before you plan to leave is equally real, and far more statistically likely for the average American household. Planning for the retirement you want is smart. Planning for the retirement you might actually get is something else entirely. And that second kind of planning is what most people are skipping. So let me leave you with a question worth sitting with. If you found out tomorrow that you had to stop working 5 years earlier than you planned, through no fault of your own, would your current financial setup survive it? Leave your answer in the comments, because I think the responses are going to say a lot about where most of us actually stand.